Hey, welcome to the Macabre Emporium. Welcome back to Macabre Emporium. We are on episode 11.
Episode 11 and the first episode of 2023.
Yay, 2023.
Hopefully everybody had a good Christmas and New Year's.
Yeah.
Yeah, well.
Ours was good, our Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, other than the frigid cold that we had come through for, 3 fucking straight days?
No, it was longer than that.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, because it came in, Thursday evening, and it was there until... Sunday night. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cold as fuck.
Yep. Unfortunately, we had a New Year's Eve episode planned, but because of the said blizzard we just talked about, we had to postpone it, and we were going to give you some idea of, how things went for our first year. And we were also, what I have been collecting is somewhat amusing audio clips from all of our previous episodes, but it came out to be 3 minutes long, and I was going to add that in, but we're going to add those in at the end of the 2023 episode now.
This episode.
Not this episode. Well, yeah, we can do that.
And we still want to get our thank yous and shit out, so...
So just to give you guys an idea how well we did in our first year, I don't think Sarah's really totaled up these numbers, plus she doesn't really look into all the other stuff like I do.
I don't even know everything that we're on to look up, so.
So, we have reached 3 continents.
Ooh.
8 countries.
Yeah.
26 states.
That's a lot.
And we have approximately 40-ish followers, which in our first 3 months, which is a lot more than I thought we would do.
Same? Yeah. So
hopefully, by the end of this year, I would like to hopefully we can double it with your guys' help with the recommendations and whatnot. And,
yes.
And for those on my personal Facebook page.
All the Dans. Hello, all the Dans.
Hello, all the Dans. She doesn't really hate December if it seems that way. She's been commenting on things.
No.
She just does it to get under my skin.
I just think it's goofy.
Yeah.
But each their own.
But with everybody's help, thank you, that has helped plug their show, or, other podcast hosts like Justin Rimmel that from Mysterious Circumstances, Kevin Carlton.
Yes.
Absolutely, can't forget him, plugging our show more than once.
The Kevins, yes.
Yep.
So, yeah, all of our USA listeners, thank you.
Yep.
All of our... we have listeners in
Australia,
Sweden,
Australia,
Singapore,
and
South Africa as of a couple nights ago, and
multiple
UK.
ones through the United Kingdom.
Yes. So thank you to every single one of you that have listened to us. It means a lot. It really does.
If anybody might be curious on what our top 5 episodes were for our first, go around at this.
I'm interested in this.
So our very first episode was, our highest downloaded episode was obviously episode 1.
Okay. Will you read the titles out? Because I'll remember what they were.
Episode 1 was What Will It Do to Your Soft Tissues, which was...
Pizza Funeral. Yeah.
Yep. And Leslie Ellen Williams, correct?
Yes.
And episode 3, which kind of surprising to me, gained a huge popularity, probably because of your true crime case involved with it, was She Is Just As Ugly on the Inside as She Is on the Outside.
Sylvia Likens.
Followed by Ronald and the Colonel Aren't Loving It, my first true crime case where I went 1,000 miles an hour straight head on into true crime.
Yeah, you did.
And the next one would be our bonus episode for Halloween.
Hell yeah.
If you're curious to why we didn't do the double episodes like we did with the Halloween one, it's just because we have Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's in such a short span of time. That would have been way too much work for us, so that's why we rolled those back into a regular weekly episode minus the New Year's one, because that never actually happened because of
Correct.
the weather getting holiday plans shifted around, and
Yes.
we weren't able to really fit in.
Plus, you having COVID and your brain fog was still pretty strong.
With typing out this episode and the New Year's one and all that, I'm pretty sure it's gone, thankfully.
Yeah, it seems to be.
And for our 5th episode, most downloaded episode was the Over the Hill episode with the birthday origins.
It's because everybody wanted to hear me bust your balls.
Oh, I'm sure that's probably what it was. What is it that you have today for us, Sarah?
I have...
Let me guess. True crime.
True crime! It is true crime. Yay. Back to my roots. I feel like it's been a little bit since I've done a true crime. Since Sylvia Likens.
It might feel that way because of the holiday episode. We decided not to do anything, more or less, you didn't want to did true crime within a holiday.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, Christmas is a big downer for the both of us, so
right.
let us do something a little more uplifting.
The Christmas episode for 2023 might be a little bit different. We might, pull off something doing true crime this year.
Oh. Maybe. Depends on if we commit a crime or not.
I don't plan on committing one.
Well, I don't plan on forcing you to commit one either.
Other than killing the podcast game, maybe. Not really.
I'm gonna kill the game. Anyways, yes, true crime for me. What are you doing?
I'm going to be doing, I guess you could say that it fits into the poll that I put into our group. If you haven't joined yet, is Macabre Emporium Podcast on Facebook. Come and join us. We'd love to hear from you guys in there. If you haven't joined already, feel free to share any stupid, memes or topic-related articles. Like I did find a 3-minute news clip from Dick Hall from the Tony Curtis episodes.
Yes.
How Indianapolis Police Department actually stayed with his family for 4 days after the fact to help give him protection, shield him from the news media. And as a thank you, he actually did speak up for a 4th time publicly after I found that, after I found this, is that he actually would help with hostage negotiations training with the Indianapolis Police Department as a thank you gift. For all the hard work that their officers put in for them during his family's time after all that.
Definitely paying that forward.
Yeah, that's like huge pay it forward that, can't really be repaid.
Yeah.
But like I said, with where I was going before I went off track.
Ha
yeah. My story is literally going off the rails.
Mine kind of goes on the rails.
Oh, no, mine totally does go off the rails. But as I was saying with a poll that I put in our Facebook group about giving me a challenge of trying to fit some weird batshit crazy Victorian period thing in there, this actually fits on top of that. So this is a,
win-win.
Win-win, basically.
Sweet.
I will be covering during its time period when in the United States, they actually crash trains for entertainment.
Oh, that was this one. Okay. That explains what you were watching the other day.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me preface this by saying this is going to be long and repetitive and absolutely insane and infuriating. From cover-ups to conspiracy theories to some real shitbag humans, buckle up for this one. I will ease you in slowly and then go full ham on the information. It's a lot. So, you ready?
Yep.
Okay.
So you're saying it's going to go up to full throttle on this?
Full... You are so punny.
Come on. It's a train-related episode, so I'm gonna,
It is. Nobody knew that it was train-related.
It is now. Anyhow.
And this is why Noodle says I'm the best host. Even though we both know she's fucking lying. It's cute. Whatever. What's up, Noodle? Anyways. Two boys had supposedly left home around midnight to head out hunting. Because what else do you do in Arkansas at midnight, really?
Go to Walmart, because Walmart is founded in Arkansas.
Seriously?
Yep.
Why do you know that?
I know.
Or just... Okay, moving on.
You're still questioning that after all this time.
I shouldn't be. The flashlight and the gun near both bodies, and I'll come full circle with that,
Okay.
The flashlight and the gun near both bodies suggest that they were using a hunting technique called spotlighting. Do you know what that is?
Probably what if they were hunting deer, probably deer in a headlight look cause them to freeze, or animals to freeze for the most part.
Yeah, so back where I came from, we call it shining up there.
Yeah.
It's basically you take out just a real super, super bright flashlight, and you don't even have to be hunting. You can just be driving through the woods, and you just shine it. You know, you shine and you look for the eyeballs, and you just watch them.
Right.
Because we never went hunting. But that's what that's what it is. You just look for eyeballs reflecting back at you.
And I also can't remember, probably sounds like it'd be illegal in some states, but
It is super illegal. At least it is up there.
probably most states where hunting's a
Super
huge
illegal.
popularity.
Yeah. Around 4 a.m. on August 23rd, 1987, a Union Pacific locomotive was traveling near Crooked Creek Trestle in Alexander, Arkansas. It was 75 train cars in length, 6,000 tons in weight, and moving at roughly 50 miles an hour. They were heading toward Little Rock, Arkansas. One of the crew members on board happened to look out the little window and saw bodies of two teenage boys laying on the tracks. And this, they said, in estimation, they saw the bodies about 300 yards in front of the train. Do you think they could stop in time?
Absolutely fucking not.
Unfortunately for this crew member, even though he did everything he could by engaging the emergency brake and blowing the horn, he was unable to stop in time.
Yeah, because actually, one of the people I volunteered with that just recently passed away, he retired from the Norfolk Southern, and he had told us about when you get involved with an accident, being car or squishy materials or soft targets, whatever you want to call it.
Soft targets, oh god.
He said the best thing we could really do is throw the emergency brake on and throw our chair around backwards and hope for the best so we didn't have to watch it.
Oh,
Is how he put it.
that's rough. You'd have to imagine it's not easy to stop something that big and that heavy traveling at that speed. Therefore, they were unable to avoid running over the bodies that were laying there. The train would end up being more than 1,000 feet beyond the point of where they saw the bodies on the track before it actually came to a stop.
No, yeah.
And that's with him doing everything he could do. Emergency brakes, everything. The crew reported what happened to the railroad and law enforcement, and by 4:40 a.m., the police had arrived on the scene. The crew members of the Union Pacific train said that both boys were partially covered by a pale green tarp. Yet the police disputed that the tarp existed at all, and that none was recovered from the scene.
If it actually did exist, it more likely was blown up out of the way at some point.
There was a gun found, which wound up being classified as a .22 caliber rifle, as well as a flashlight. And as I stated before, they were both near the bodies. These would be the bodies of two best friends, 16-year-old Donald George Henry, who went by Don, and 17-year-old Larry Kevin Ives, who went just by Kevin. Both boys from Bryant in Saline County. Unfortunately, this is probably the most straightforward information that will be given. This is a case full of cover-ups from state, federal, and local governments who would all be playing a part in this case. And it started already, with the police officers stating that there was no tarp, and ordering the scene to be examined as an accident rather than a murder. The collection of evidence was downright stupid. There were pieces that weren't even collected, which included one of Kevin Ives's feet.
They didn't collect an actual physical body part.
Correct. His foot sat there on the tracks for a few days before it was found by one of the victim's family members.
I'm surprised it stayed that long and something didn't carry it off.
Yeah, especially being Arkansas. That's awful.
Yeah.
Can you imagine having found your dead relative's foot?
Days later, and it's already bloated and everything.
Yes. The EMTs that were there claimed that the body and condition of the bodies would suggest that both victims were dead before the train hit them, but those statements were omitted from the report. Kevin and Don's deaths were initially ruled accidental as the result of both boys being sleepy on the tracks due to smoking 20 marijuana cigarettes
Yeah, okay.
and basically putting themselves into a weed coma.
What did they do? Reference the 1920s film Reefer Madness as a fucking medical guide here, basically? You ever watch that?
No.
Oh, you should. I
have not.
Fucking hilarious.
I bet.
Yeah, it basically ends up with their main character committing murder because he smoked weed.
The medical examiner, Dr. Fahmy Malik, said that they had marijuana intoxication.
Yeah, okay. And you already know I've never smoked weed a day in my life before, and I even know that's fucking bullshit.
Yes.
I mean, you can be high as fuck, but unless that's like the medical term for high as fuck is marijuana intoxication.
I don't know. Either way, like, give me a fucking break. You're not... First of all, unless you're Snoop Dogg, you're probably not going to be able to smoke 20 fucking joints.
Or Willie Nelson.
Or, yeah. But not a 16 and 17-year-old boy.
No.
They'd be gone off of a half of a joint.
And they probably don't have enough money to have that much weed.
Correct.
Even at this time. When a dime bag was still a dime.
Right. Those were pretty much the same sentiments of the boys' parents. They're
Right.
like, there's no fucking way. 5 months after the boys were both killed, their parents held a press conference in hopes that it would force authorities to reopen the investigation. The very next day, they did just that, and it was officially reopened. The presiding judge, John Cole, would assign attorney Dan Harmon as special prosecutor of the case, and he would be assisted by attorney Richard Garrett. Harmon and Garrett would go on to Kevin's mother and promise her that they would do everything in their power to bring her son's killer or killers to justice. Though as weeks and months went by, the investigation didn't get very far. Go figure. The bodies were exhumed for a second autopsy, as he was also skeptical of the marijuana findings that Malik, the autopsy guy, had originally concluded with. Garrett said that he had found what he would equate to like 1 to possibly 2 joints worth of weed. That was it.
Right.
So how the medical examiner got 20, who knows?
Maybe you forgot to erase the 0? I don't know. I doubt that.
Yeah. He also found concrete evidence that one of the boys was dead before being placed on the tracks, and the other one was unconscious prior to the train rolling over them. Garrett would then focus on the pale green tarp that was reported by the crew on the train. The parents were avid that neither boy owned one, so Garrett wanted to know where it came from, who covered them with it, and why they did it.
Right.
The jury had ruled Kevin and Don's death as probable homicide, after finding out that Don's shirt had evidence of a stab wound on the back of it. Kevin's skull had also been crushed by his own weapon, which was the .22 caliber rifle.
Right.
He didn't do that shit himself.
Right.
After this, the jury changed their ruling to definite homicide. The father of Don made a statement saying that he did not believe his son would have risked scratching up his rifle by laying it on the ground, especially on gravel.
Right.
So, like, he wouldn't have gotten on... If they had willingly, like, walked themselves and sat down on the tracks, like, he wouldn't have just laid his weapon down.
Right.
He took a lot more pride in it than that.
Yeah, because it was probably, if he had that much pride in it, it was probably a gift to him from probably his father or a relative, or
Probably.
Or he had to, mow lawns to get it, lack of a better kid job, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
It was probably like, I guess you could say probably his like first real adult purchase, when at this time, what year did you say this was?
87, I believe it
Yeah,
was.
you probably still could
87.
just buy, specific firearms at a certain age at this time, but I'm not sure. I'm not a
Right.
firearms expert, but anyhow.
His dad did also say that there's no way that he would let somebody ruin his weapon,
Mm-hmm.
and he damn sure wouldn't be the one to ruin, like, to scuff up his own weapon. Right. Prosecutor Garrett is quoted saying all 4 of the people on the train who were able to observe the scene prior to the accident stated that the boys were partially covered by a green tarp.
Which is interesting that this green tarp keeps coming up, because I'm thinking about, with my knowledge of railroads, Being in 87, you're probably only looking at an engineer and a conductor at this time because cabooses were actually being phased out, and it was by 1987 is when they stopped using those before the flagman was moved up into the cab. So there's at least 2 eyewitnesses
4
in the cab itself.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, I got you.
Seeing this tarp.
Yeah.
And there's also, well, depending on how late into 87 this was, it could still be the flagman was still in the cab as well, too. And
right.
So now you'd have a possible 2 to 3 seeing this tarp immediately.
Yeah. But as I stated earlier, the police that searched the scene later denied the tarp ever existed. And also that the engineer aboard the train never mentioned a tarp. The engineer came out saying that the police even questioned him about the tarp's existence. The engineer said that, to me, would be like questioning the existence of the boys on the track in general.
Right.
Because what's real is real and what's not is not. And it was there as well as the boys.
Right.
So, yeah. Then they got a lead.
A traveling tarp salesman.
Yeah. Yup. No. About a week before the boys died, a man wearing military fatigues was spotted near the tracks. The way he was acting made police officer Danny Allen's suspicions grow. So he went to question him until the man opened fire on him. Danny Allen said, "I got up from my seat. The subject was gone. We searched the area and never found the subject."
Yeah, well, let's not try and make ourselves look too fucking guilty here.
Right. On the night of Kevin and Don's death, witnesses again reported seeing a man in military fatigues. They said he was heading down a road less than 600 feet from the exact spot where the boys' bodies would be found. Police, of course, were never able to find him, because that's just how they work. This drug sale was a bit different, though, as it was a police-protected drug deal. The deal was part of a drug smuggling ring based in a small airport in Mena, Arkansas. The Mena ring was set up in the early 1980s by a notorious drug dealer smuggler named Barry Seal. While facing prison after a drug conviction in Florida, Barry flew to Washington, D.C. and put together a deal that allowed him to avoid any prison time. How?
By selling tarps as his traveling salesman.
No, by becoming an informant for the U.S. government, of course.
That would have been my second guess.
Yeah. Although the traveling tarp salesman's pretty great. Yeah. While being an informant against other drug smugglers, Barry testified that he worked for both the DEA and the CIA. In a federal court case, Barry stated that his income from March 1984 to August 1985 was between $700,000 and $800,000 by being an informant. Yeah. This was what he was making after his deal with the government was made. He also testified that almost $66,000 of that came from smuggling drugs while working for and with permission of the DEA. Aside from his informant duty, Barry was used to help finance Nicaraguan Contras by the CIA. I had to look that up. And according to Google...
I know about Contras is up, down, left, right, BA start or something like that.
Was that a game?
That's the Konami code for Contra. They give you 99 lives.
Oh, I don't know that.
There's something similar to that.
Okay, so according to Google, their default explanation is, and this is quoted right off of Google,
Yeah.
the Contras were various U.S.-backed and funded right-wing rebel groups that were active from 1979 to 1990 in opposition to the Marxist Sandinista junta of National Reconstruction Government in Nicaragua, which came to power in 1979 following the Nicaraguan Revolution. And even reading that, I don't fucking know what it is.
They sound like militia groups.
That's what it, yeah. I mean, other than that, to me, it just wasn't a very good description. Anyways, the Mena ring and CIA connection was concretely undeniable when a cargo plane that was given to Barry by the CIA was shot down over Nicaragua. Even with all that evidence, each investigator who tried to expose the crimes of Mena had been destroyed professionally. Those involved in drug smuggling rings continued to receive protection from state and federal authorities. Theorists state that their death came to them because they witnessed that drug deal, which was very, very similar to Barry Seal's operation near Mena. That place. They claimed it was murder, but this would not be the only theory that came out. There were many. Kevin's father, Larry, had hired a private detective to see if they could find out what had truly happened. Larry was quoted as saying every time he would try to find something out, it seemed like he would meet resistance from different authorities and we weren't getting anywhere. Unsolved Mysteries would air an episode about this case and would leave a number to call with tips. When the show was broadcast, a witness, Keith Coney, had already been murdered, and within a 6-month span, 5 more were killed. Dun, dun, dun!
Because this doesn't smell like a government cover-up
Hell
at
no.
all. I can already feel my tinfoil hat tightening up hearing this.
Yeah. They were all linked by having been interviewed by either Harmon or Garrett, the 2 prosecutors.
Okay.
Dan Harmon and Richard Garrett would get numerous phone calls with tips. However, in an extremely redacted FBI file from 93, witnesses that called into Garrett's tip line were apparently threatened and told not to call again and to not talk about the murders. First off,
again, this doesn't smell like a government cover-up at all.
right. Do you know what redacted is?
Yes, it's when they basically blank out a line, because I've kind of...
Okay.
I've looked at some stuff, like, out of curiosity.
And it's just the thick black lines, you can't read it.
Yep, pretty much.
Yes. Okay. So bits and pieces have come out over time, and it's helped piece together the story of what happened, and now we're going to really, dig into this.
Okay.
That was all just, prep. Keep in mind everything that I've said up to this point.
Okay.
Okay? Around 2 a.m., heading home from hunting, Kevin and Don walked the tracks and happened to come across a group of 5 people. This would be Dan Harmon, Keith McCassell, Charlene Wilson, and 2 other people that I could not get the names for. There was a very brief confrontation and at least 1 fired shot. The boys took off running and ran straight into Keith Coney. So Keith Coney was the one that I had just talked about that was murdered before the Unsolved Mysteries episode actually aired. And he was riding his motorcycle at the time. They walked with Keith and wound up talking about what had just happened. Then 2 off-duty cops, Kirk Lane and Jay Campbell, showed up in an unmarked car and arrested both Kevin and Don. But why?
Right.
And Keith fled on his bike. One of the officers would hit Kevin in the back of the head with the butt of his rifle, his own rifle, not Kevin's rifle. And it wound up knocking Kevin out cold. With the boys in the back of the car, Lane and Campbell headed east back towards the train tracks, where they met up with Harmon and the rest of the group that they had run into earlier. Reports aren't clear, but it is believed that Kevin died en route due to the injuries sustained being...
Blunt force trauma.
Yeah. Yep, with that happening in the car, and that this would be the best time to go ahead and kill Don by stabbing him in the back. This is when their bodies would be laid out on the tracks and covered with a tarp, as they hoped a train would come by, the crew might see the tarp and think nothing of it and just roll by.
Yeah, okay, when they're trained to stop for any obstruction on railroad tracks, but...
Right. Unfortunately, for this group of idiots, the wind is a thing.
Yeah.
And the tarp had blown a bit, partially uncovering one of the boys.
So this tarp actually does exist. Or existed.
It does not exist.
Okay.
Yes, it fucking existed. The reason for the murders is what was seen when they encountered the group. The boys had been witness to a drug sale and had multiple witnesses' testimony to that, as well as past polygraphs. Mm-hmm. So, they can't really hide that.
Right.
They saw Dan Harmon being protected by local officials and law enforcement, collecting a huge shipment of cocaine that was dropped off by a low-flying airplane. Enter the Barry Seal and Mena shit from earlier. Okay, so we're going to dig in a little bit to these autopsies.
Okay.
The first autopsy was done by, I had already said, Fahmy Malek. He had seemingly mutilated the boys' bodies during their autopsy and told his assistant to never mind the stab wound. Yeah.
It's like, hey, doctor, there's a giant stab wound in his back. Yeah, that's nothing. Don't pay attention to that.
Right. An independent medical examiner said it was the most bizarre autopsy he had ever seen. What would make Malik butcher the bodies the way he did? Was there something in it for him? It just so happens that the person that appointed him as medical examiner for this case would allow him to continue working after fucking up as badly as he did, as well as praising him and giving him a 40% pay raise. Yeah. The one that did all of this was none other than the governor of Arkansas at the time, Bill fucking Clinton.
Great. Now we're going to have the Clinton Death Squad after us. Thanks a lot. This may be our last episode, everybody.
Yeah. But this seemingly is kind of like how Malik operated. He would fuck up and basically listen to what the police would say and what their thoughts on whatever it was that happened to this person. And that's kind of what he would just put on the report. Yeah.
Yeah. So now that we're probably going to have 2 downloads near the fucking White House, and just for the record, we do not have any information on Hillary Clinton, so please let us be.
Yeah. So yeah, he'd botch the written report and make the death different than what it actually was. For instance, there was an autopsy he did of a man that was decapitated. Okay? Decapitated. But he put stomach ulcer as the cause of death.
What the It reminds me of, like, I think it's the first episode of Better Call Saul when he's trying to defend the fucking teenagers. And the defense just silently gets up and turns on the fucking video of them pulling the head off of a fucking body.
Yep. Yeah. So the cause of death for that guy was a stomach ulcer. And the reason his head was missing was because the family dog ate it.
God, I hope this guy is, like, got his license fucking pulled at this point.
Even going so far as to say he found brain tissue in the dog's stomach.
Is this like fucking Dr. Nick from The Simpsons? Really? In like a new name?
I don't know. But yeah, so supposedly found brain tissue in the dog's stomach, even though the head would later turn up in a garbage can.
Fully intact, I bet,
Fully
too.
intact.
Oh, shocker.
Yeah, well, I mean, sans body, but yes, fully intact head. What did Malik say about this? Well, the dog must have thrown it up, of course. The whole fucking head.
Yeah. What was this dog, like a Tibetan Mastiff? Like, or is it, no, Tibetan Mastiff or fucking Clifford? To throw up a whole fucking human head?
Yeah.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Fully intact head, no bite marks whatsoever. Another one was he ruled a suicide for a man that was shot in the chest 5 times.
No, let me guess, fucking stomach ulcer again, too. Like, how we talked about before in previous episodes, how we look up people to see what they look like. I want to see the fucking face of stupid.
You will. Yeah, shot in the chest 5 times. There was no gun left at the scene or residue on him, so obviously not suicide.
Right.
However, the most damning one, in my opinion, is that of 17-year-old Susan Deere. June 1981, she was drinking and riding in cars with boys, and they drove past Billy Ray Washington. The fellows in the car threw a beer can and yelled racial obscenities at Washington, and in retaliation, she picked up a chunk of concrete and threw it at the car. The chunk hit Deere instead of the car and caused damage to her nose and her teeth. She went to the hospital, and thankfully her facial injuries were not life-threatening. However, they would require reconstructive surgery. The next day, she had surgery, and everything was going well until complications arose, and she died in surgery. I mean, stupid game, stupid prizes.
Yep.
The well-documented complications happened when nurse anesthetist Virginia Dwyer Kelly had a hard time transferring the breathing tube from her throat to her nose. Susan Deere was left without oxygen for a good chunk of time. We all know what happens when you're without oxygen for a decent amount of time.
It causes the dead.
Brain death.
Yeah.
So anyways, Malik signed off on the death report as it being homicide. death by blunt force trauma. This led to Billy Ray Washington being tried for murder and letting Virginia Dwyer Kelly off for malpractice. Oh yeah, Virginia Dwyer Kelly is also Bill Clinton's mom.
Oh, like I said. What a surprise. This is no government cover-ups whatsoever.
Yes. At the beginning of 1989, the public raised such a stink about the drug epidemic and kept talking about how crooked the local officials were, that it inspired a federal probing into corruption in Saline County. This would be overseen by U.S. Attorney Chuck Banks and ran by Robert Govar. Coincidentally, in the same time frame, the budget would clear for a new drug task force to be led by prosecutor Jean Duffy. Jean was told from the start that she was not allowed to use her task force to investigate any public officials.
Of course not.
Yeah. She would only be on this investigation for 9 months and have her reputation marred by her boss, Gary Arnold, due to several shutdowns. Even though it didn't take her long, she had her undercover agents on the prowl. They discovered the entire drug ring shenanigans was run by faces and names that we already know. Dan Harmon, Kirk Lane, and Jay Campbell. Jean Duffy utilized the fact that she was running a parallel investigation to Govar's, that she went to him and handed everything over that she had found out. But that would prove to be a fuck up.
All right.
Robert Govar had two best friends that just happened to be Kirk Lane and Jay Campbell, the two cops that are believed to be the murderers of these boys.
Yeah.
Not shockingly, that connection would never see the light of day. Even though the grand jury told Chuck Banks to indict Harmon, Lane, and Campbell, and all of the others involved in the ring in Saline County, Banks declined, saying that the investigation had found zero evidence of corruption. And I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty fucking corrupt to me.
No, not so whatsoever. Not the slightest fucking bit.
Yeah, okay. Jean Duffy wound up being practically the only person to actually do their job correctly. And that also means that she didn't make any friends. Not that she was trying to, but
right.
Yeah. She was now the target.
Yeah.
By late 1990, Don Harmon was elected district prosecutor and used all of his newfound power against Jean and her task force. Within a few weeks, Jean Duffy was fired and then subpoenaed for court to hand over all of her records and file. She refused and had a warrant put out for her arrest for failure to appear. By June 1991, a large portion of her task force resigned, and she was told by numerous of her undercover informants that there was a $50,000 bounty on her head. With this, she was forced to take off, but being the smart woman she was, she took all of her files with her when she left.
Yeah.
2 years later, there would be a break in the case. There were new witnesses. One witness, Tommy Niehaus, contacted Linda Ives, which was Kevin's mother, and told her everything he knew, and then immediately went into the witness protection program. The next witness was Charlene Wilson, former girlfriend of Dan Harmon, the police officer.
Right.
Well, yeah. She would share her story, and it would align with Tommy Niehaus's story, and provide an accurate account of what had happened that night. Charlene would tell numerous stories of Don Harmon and his drug trafficking, as well as cocaine-filled parties with Bill Clinton in the governor's mansion. In 1994, the FBI is now involved and cleared Jean Duffy of all the false claims against her made by Harmon. From there, Linda Ives and Jean Duffy would band together and begin working and making huge leaps in the case. Things were once again going smoothly, and the ball was rolling in the right direction. But as with the rest of the case so far, the ball stopped. The FBI found no shortage of corruption in the state or county level. Quite the opposite, actually. They found that Chuck Banks should have been indicted for obstruction. However, the more they dug in, the closer they would get to the DEA, Governor Clinton, and the things happening at the Mena airport, the more attention it got from the Washington Bureau. In 1995, the case was shut down by Special Agent Ivan Smith. In 1996, Jean Duffy and Linda Ives released a documentary called Obstruction of Justice, The Mena Connection. In it, they would name Kirk Lane and Jay Campbell as the probable killers. Both of those guys were sued for defamation and thankfully lost. It was decided by the jury that they had gathered enough evidence and that any rational person would come to the conclusion of guilt on their own. In 2007, Jay Campbell was convicted of 23 counts of various felonies, including drug and sex trafficking. He would face more than 300 years in prison. Judge John Cole would actually come out of retirement to be the one to cover the case. And he reduced the sentence from 300 years plus to just 40 years. Even though the case would eventually be reversed, thankfully his conviction came in 2010, and he would be sentenced to an extra 15 years in prison. Dr. Fahmy Malek. This fucker got off pretty scot-free.
Of course. Because the dumbest ones, like, be kind to dumb animals. And that's basically a fucking I'm guessing it's about to fucking happen.
Governor Bill Clinton would pay 2 out-of-state...
Kilton would have been still just as fitting, but anyway.
Yeah. Governor Bill Clinton would pay 2 out-of-state medical examiners from his discretionary fund. The 2 were hired, and they praised Malek's work and called him outstanding. But it's funny how that would change.
Dipshit.
Yeah, that's funny how that would change when Bill Clinton would run for president. Clinton had a moment of clarity for himself only, and realized that Malek was a huge liability, so he asked him to resign. Malek was then given a job with the local health department and was stuck consulting venereal diseases from that point on.
My next thing was, was he asked to be, quote-unquote, resigned?
Yeah. Well,
resigned permanently from life.
That's that's when Clinton was going to run for president, so he's like, yeah, I fucked up. We're just going to get rid of this guy.
Like, what's going to happen with all these people when he comes, goes for the presidency? Dowers answered that question.
Yeah. In 2017, a former professional wrestler, Billy Jack Haynes. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
Me neither.
He could have been like a minor league, not like WWE.
Or just, a backyard wrestler.
Yeah.
Anyways, Billy Jack Haynes would come forward and confess on video that he helped move the boys and place them on the railroad tracks. He said that the track was being used as a drop-off area for drug smugglers, and then said that the 2 boys showed up while the drop was happening. He said while he did move the bodies, others were responsible for killing them. He claims that the murders of Kevin and Don were just one of several that happened due to drug trafficking. However, that remains unproven.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean it didn't happen, though. Sadly, Kevin's mother, Linda Ives, passed away on June 3rd, 2021 at the age of 71. She had spent her life dedicated to her son and finding his and his best friend Don's killer.
Mm-hmm.
She fought tooth and nail and did everything she could think of to bring some sort of justice for both families. Kevin's father, Larry, and his sister, Alicia, are still alive as far as I know. I couldn't find much of anything about Don's family after the fact.
Okay.
So that's that.
So that's that.
Fucking twisty, just the government cover-up shit is just insane.
Yeah, it is. People, if you suddenly see our names in an obituary section all of a sudden, just remember, we did not kill ourselves.
Right.
Or we didn't, and if it comes out to be murder-suicide, we didn't shoot each other because we're not that fucking psycho or whatever. But yeah, whatever our obituary comes out after, the Clintons come after us, don't fucking believe it. It's bullshit.
Word. What did you think of that?
That was quite interesting, though, because it's like the tarp was like the biggest thing. Is like, does this tarp exist or not? No, it doesn't. Yes, it does. No, it doesn't.
Yes, it did exist, but the officials did everything they could to try and cover that shit up.
Like, if them using this as a drop-off point in full flying planes, it must have been a pretty wide area.
Yeah, it had to be.
Well, look at the ones near our house.
Mm-hmm.
The 3 wide tracks. If you have a good enough pilot, they can probably make it in there minus the singling bridges.
I believe this was a single track.
Right away, it's still clear pretty well, but it was probably a single prop plane that it flew in with, would be my guess, and dropped it at a low altitude, because it's like the song from Reverend Horton Heat comes to mind called Bales of Cocaine.
Oh.
Because the main chorus is bales of cocaine dropped from low-flying planes.
Oh.
It's on one of the newer albums I actually bought, if I remember correctly.
Huh.
Yeah, that was quite interesting.
Yeah.
So now we've kind of dipped into a conspiracy theory, I guess you could say, even though it was actually proven what was actually going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never really knew about that, about our former president, having cocaine-fueled parties at the governor's mansion. But, 70s and 80s, I'm sure everybody was fucking doing that shit.
Or that his mom was a nurse and fucking killed somebody on the table and got away with it scot-free by letting a black woman take the fall for her. So what are you going to talk about?
I'm going to talk about train crashes for entertainment, and one in particular that had some injuries and 2 fatalities.
Oh.
And it also caused a very temporary town to be the second largest city in Texas for its time period.
What?
It was a temporary town.
Oh.
It lasted 1 day, and it was the second largest populated city in the state of Texas for a day. Today, to seek a thrill, all we have to do is hop in our cars, drive to maybe an amusement park, and hop on a roller coaster, or a night of destruction at your local speedway if you're lucky to have one near where you live. Night of destruction being like your demolition derbies, your figure 8 suicide races, stuff like that. But 85 years before monster trucks and 51 years before NASCAR was officially founded, thrill-seeking tourists and townsfolk would have to travel to festivals and fairs to witness intentional train wrecks. But in 1896, one of these first train crashes would be stitched into American history known as the Crash at Crush.
Crash at Crush?
Yep.
Okay.
This form of entertainment started a year before in Ohio by a name A.L. Streeter. They didn't say what his initials were for. Streeter came up with this idea so people could see what train wrecks look like safely as part of the opening entertainment for Buckeye Pleasure Park, which we know today as theme parks.
That's so expensive, though.
And at this time, they didn't really think about it twice.
I guess.
His formula for this event is what most of these train crashes followed after this very first one that he did for this grand opening for this park. Streeter would line up 1,800 feet of track or up to a mile, where at each end would be a locomotive facing towards each other. The head end would be facing towards each other. The engineers would wait for a signal to proceed forward and jump from the locomotives before they would crash into each other. There would be 6 crashes before the crush in 1896.
Intentional crashes.
Intentional railroad crashes. So,
okay.
Anytime that I mention crashes, it's intentional train crashes for this. Following the Panic of 1893, which was like a more mild Great Depression for this time, the Missouri, Kansas, Texas Railroad, or as it's known to its rail fans, is the Katy. And since Missouri, Kansas, Texas Railroad is kind of a mouthful, I'm going to refer to it as its rail fan name through this. The Katy Railroad was struggling after this depression, basically, for freight and passenger revenue.
Okay.
A passenger agent by the name of William George Crush, who worked for the Katy Railroad, was given a task to find a way to attract new passengers to the rail line. George Crush had heard of these train crashes that were staged in Ohio before, and he wanted to do the same thing for the Katy Railroad. He proposed that seeing the train crash be free, but the only way to get there was to purchase a round-trip ticket to Crush, Texas, which is the temporary town, for $2, and, once again...
Inflation calculator!
Yep. Which would equal out to $66.22 today.
That's
from anywhere in the state of Texas.
That's very cheap.
At the time, it was still probably quite a bit of money.
Yeah, but in today's money, that's
right.
That's
and in
cheap.
The state of Texas, for going anywhere from the state of Texas for $66,
you can't even fill your gas tank for $66.
I think it probably costs about that for us to go to Chicago by South Shore these days. I don't know what the going rates are for it now. Before putting this event together, William Crush would ask an unknown amount of Katy engineers about crashing the 2 locomotives for this event, and all but one said it was safe. The one engineer that said it was dangerous would tell Crush that the locomotives would explode at impact. Crush dismissed his warning and carried on since he was the only one that was against it. This warning would be one of the first mistakes William Crush would make.
I feel like there's a lot more coming.
Now there is, kinda, but Before I continue on, I want to kind of go over a little bit how steam engines at the time worked for those that aren't familiar with them as much as I am, so we can understand how dangerous these really are. And because you see the trains go up and down the tracks all the time, diesels, there's still a lot of moving parts, but steam engines, it was simple but yet very complex on how they worked. Steam engines, they are powered by the heating of water in a boiler to create steam that would be converted into engine energy after it's forced into a piston. The piston is where all the forward momentum comes from, of it being forced in and pushing the head of the plunger back, basically like your cylinder for your car. Their speed is controlled by opening a valve to either inject more steam by creating the pressure higher to make the piston push out faster. With these pistons being pushed out, this would create the energy that makes the wheels move by a rod connected to the end of the piston. The speed of the engine is also controlled by opening and closing a valve to either let in more or reduce the amount of steam injected into the piston. The class of locomotives that were used for this are known as the American class. Think of the steam trains from old-timey westerns.
Okay.
Or like
just kind of rinky-dink little...
Yeah, very small. Okay. When we started watching Hell on Wheels, those were a very, very, very crude model of an American engine. Golden Spike Ceremony at Promontory Point. The two engines face to face each other. Those are American class.
Okay.
The American class would have a boiler pressure of 90 psi, and later on near the end of the steam era, boiler pressures would get up to 200 psi. So like the big boy, the world's largest operating steam locomotive now, has a boiler pressure of up to 200 pounds per square inch.
And they need a lot because it's a big, it's a big boy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. These are basically moving bombs for the most part.
Okay.
With that much pressure. Even at 90 pounds, that's still a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
William Crush would acquire two 30-ton locomotives of the American class that I just mentioned. It would be number 999 and number 1001 that were being replaced by newer 60-ton locomotives. William Crush would have number 999 painted green with red trim, whereas number 1001 was painted in the opposite colors. So it was painted green with the red. No, don't be painted red with the green trim.
Right.
Setting up for this event, the temporary town of Crush, Texas would be built just outside of Waco, Texas, which is now more famous for something more infamous these days. Katie would construct a 4-mile section of track that was separated from the rest of the railroad and to keep the trains from possibly reaching the main line where all the spectators were coming in for the event. This 4-mile track section was set up to start on top of two hills, and the trains would meet in a valley where all the spectators had gathered to witness this crash.
You may get to this at a certain point, but like, how many people came to watch that?
Oh, I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
I'm just giving you this idea of how he had this all set up. Okay. At first, I thought this is what they would initially call what was a flag stop, which is basically if there's not somebody there with a flag out on a post, they're not going to stop. No, they literally built a freaking functional depot for all of this. And this included telegraph services for the press and other amenities available as well in Crush, Texas. William Crush was actually good friends with one of the Ringling Brothers, and he borrowed a circus tent from them to set up a restaurant. He would also have pre-show entertainment as well. Carnival rides and games were also on the site with cigar vendors, medicine shows, which snake oil salesmen. Basically, is what that is. Which after reading this little article, I figure out what a medicine show was. I might do an episode on that this year. Oh. And sideshow acts, and they had even constructed a jail and manned the grounds with 200 constables, police officers is what the constables was at the term for this.
So this area had to be pretty big if there were 200 officers.
Yeah. Well, they probably weren't exactly sure how much people were coming, so they probably got as many people as you can, because my time at the fire service, when talking about doing scene size ups, there was this term we would use called go ugly early. Which basically means call everybody out now and then reel them back in as you don't really need them.
Right.
And there was also a grandstand was constructed for the honored guests, along with a bandstand and a platform for the press at Crush, Texas for all this. Even though this event would end up somewhat of a disaster, they did take some safety precautions. But like I said, it probably wasn't really enough because they didn't know what was going to happen. In the weeks leading up to this, they would perform speed tests to calculate how fast each train had to be going to meet at the same exact time for people to see this, where the crowd has gathered at.
Okay.
Some of the other safety precautions that were taken, the rail cars were chained together, since the more modern knuckle coupler that the trains use now has not been invented at this time. They used what was called a pin and rack system. No, loop and pin. Basically.
Right.
That's it.
You guys couldn't see him, but he made the motion of a dick in a vagina.
I wouldn't go with that. I just made a circle with my hand and stuck my finger through it.
It's exactly what you do. Boop. See?
So yeah, the episode's a little bit dirty behind
behind the microphone.
Behind the microphone, yeah.
Behind the shop counter. That's what it is.
Yeah. Each of these trains consist, or the number of cars total, would be 6 boxcars loaded with railroad ties. I'm going to make the assumption that they loaded these cars down with these railroad ties for some weight so the cars wouldn't get airborne from once the collision happens.
Oh, yeah.
Because at this time, steel boxcars weren't a thing yet. They were all wood. I mean, you probably had your iron frames for flooring and framework, and that was about it. But everything else is wood, because Henry Ford being one of our favorite places, they had rail cars on display there, and you saw how small they are and how much they are of wood. This is also probably the other mistake that I don't think because they didn't expect this explosion to happen. They would establish a safety perimeter of 200 yards for the public. Honestly, should have probably been much farther back, which probably changed after this happened. And the press was able to be at least 100 yards away from it, because you didn't have zoom lenses like we do now.
So if 200 yards was way too close, 100 yards, like, turned into barbecue, I'm assuming.
Not exactly.
No?
The weeks leading up to the crash, the crash that was dubbed the Duel of the Iron Monsters would be advertised across North Texas by rail and in newspaper ads and flyers across the state of Texas as well. The Katy expected anywhere between 20 and 25,000 people to attend, but at the day of the crash, by 10 a.m., 10,000 people have already showed up.
Damn, that's a lot.
And this is supposed to start at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
In the heat of the day.
Mm-hmm. If remember, I forgot to put the date in there. I think the date was September 15th. So
it was really hot.
Yeah.
Plus being in Texas.
Mm-hmm. In an old-timey Victorian suits and dresses.
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah.
There's already 10,000 people there by 10 a.m., and they're still coming in by the freaking trainload. And by 4 p.m., how many people do you think actually showed up?
25,000.
Higher than that.
50,000.
Less than that.
37,000.
You're almost there.
38.
40,000 people showed up.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Damn.
So, yeah, these 40,000 people that showed up to crush Texas would make it the second largest city in Texas for the day.
And it wasn't even a real city.
It wasn't even a real city. It was a temporary town made for this spectacle.
That's crazy.
For the Katy Railroad. The crash was actually scheduled to take place at 4 p.m., but even Karens existed in the time, and ignoring the safety barriers placed for their own safety, they didn't think it, they had to apply the rules.
Of course. Fucking Karens.
So it took them over an hour to push the crowd back behind the 200-yard barrier. At 5 p.m., the crowds would finally be under control and pushed back to a safe distance. The two trains would touch cow catchers.
Cow catchers?
The big pointy thing in the front was always known as a cow catcher on these older steam engines.
Okay.
They weren't really meant to catch cows. They were more the fling cows.
You're talking about like the point in the front, like on the Polar Express.
Yes.
Okay.
On the American class, it was more prominent. I'm obviously going to show pictures.
Right.
For when you send you pictures for when you do the YouTube part of this.
Correct.
But yeah, they didn't really catch cows like I always thought as a kid. Where like for some reason as a kid, I thought like when a cow hit it, it would fold up and hold carry a cow. Well, my name.
I mean, that's nicer than the alternative, I guess.
I mean, yeah, it's nicer than reality when it's just going to splatter a cow or split it in half or deflect it to a point, or it snaps its neck when it hits the ground, if that.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what happened to the engine if a fucking moose hit it.
Oh, God.
Like that video that's been going around lately of the cop car that fucking hits a moose broadside, and a moose just gets up like nothing fucking happened.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're getting off track here. Hey! The two engines would touch cow catchers, and then they would push themselves back. They would reverse these engines and go to their starting points. William Crush would ride in on a white Charger, and he would raise his hat and send the signal to both of the locomotives that come to initiate the crash. The train crews would tie off the whistles and only ride these two doomed engines for about 4 cycles of the main drive wheels before they would jump off. They believe that these trains met somewhere between 45 miles per hour and 90 miles per hour.
That's a big difference.
It's the two numbers that came up with all the resources.
But either way, you've got two things that heavy going.
Right.
That even 45 miles an hour, like that's going to do some damage.
Right. And I'm going to say it was probably closer to 45 just because of the age of the engines. I do have a couple quotes here to give you an idea of what it was like witnessing the crash. And then I have another one that comes up about what it was like when it exploded.
Okay.
And so this first one is there's no names or anything. The article that they came from, not even available online anymore.
Oh, wow.
The rumble of the two trains faint and far off at first, but growing nearer and more distinct with each fleeting second was like the gathering force of a cyclone. Nearer and nearer they came, the whistles of each blowing repeatedly, and the torpedoes which had been placed on the tracks exploding in almost continuous round-like rattle of musketry. They rolled down at a frightful rate of speed within a quarter of a mile of each other, nearer and nearer as they approached the fatal meeting place. The rumbling increased, the roaring grew louder.
Wow.
And
I can only imagine.
And a torpedo is basically like a small section of explosive that they would use attached to the railhead, so when it roll over. Think of it as a little snap popper thing on frickin' steroids, basically.
Okay.
And enough explosive force for them to feel and hear it inside of one of these extremely loud operating engines. It was used as an early warning device. They still use them in some areas today. Shortly after the crash, there was a large explosion from the boilers of both engines, sending wood and metal flying through the air, killing 2 and injuring 6 other people. One of these injuries that I could find information on was photographer for the event, Jarvis Dean, and would still have his team take photos while he dealt with an iron bolt now lodged into his eye.
Jeez, that's dedication.
Yeah. A Civil War veteran even described the explosion and aftermath more terrifying than the Battle of Gettysburg.
Wow.
I'm not sure if this next quote is from the said veteran, but it did keep coming up with all the other places that I did read the information on this. There was a swift instant of silence, and then, as if controlled by a single impulse, both boilers exploded simultaneously, and the air was filled with flying missiles of iron and steel, varying in sizes from the postage stamp to half of a driving wheel.
Wow.
I'm sure the wood splintered from the boxcars, the ties. I don't know if these were coal burning or wood burning. I'm pretty sure all Americans were wood burning, so now all the wood in the tenders just being flung everywhere. And William Crush would actually be fired immediately on the spot because of this explosion and of what happened.
Who fired him? If this was like his thing,
Higher ups of Katie executives.
Okay, gotcha.
People above him. But after these higher ups heard how the people in attendance had such a great time during this crash, he was actually rehired the next day.
Oh, that's fucking lucky, I guess.
Even though the crash at Crush was a one-time event for the Katy Railroad, but a man by the name of Joe Conley would actually go on to stage 70 more train wrecks between 1896 and 1932, and it would earn the nickname of Head-On Joe.
Of course he would. Of course he would. I mean, what else would you call him?
The funny thing is, when I was writing my script for this, I knew as soon as you hear that, it's like, of course he would.
Did you really?
Yes, I did.
It's like you know me or something.
I knew exactly as soon as you heard me read that, you were going to be like, of course he would.
Yeah.
Joe Conley would get his start with being a professional train crasher at the Iowa State Fair, and from here he would crisscross the country from LA to Boston staging train wrecks. In his travels, he would spice things up with strapping dynamite to the front of these trains and also filling them with hot coals and gasoline so they would explode into a giant fireball when they would actually crash.
I mean, you give a boy a toy, right?
Right.
You know they're going to be destructive. And
Right.
Like, come on.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And he would also paint different political candidates for spectators to root for the locomotives during this crash. So yeah, political bullshit like it is now.
Jeez.
It's been around forever for the most part. For example, one of these political ones, he would stage a Hoover versus Roosevelt in 1932. In the height of the Great Depression, the train wrecks for entertainment. It starts to quickly lose popularity as it was deemed extremely wasteful of resources during the Depression, and kindly would stage his last wreck, fittingly at the Iowa State Fair again, and his final words that was been reported that he said as he walked away was, "Well, that's that."
Wow. That was very anticlimactic. I was hoping it was something fucking like, well, fuck you too then. No.
The last known train wreck of this type would actually be held in 1935, but I couldn't find any details where it was or what happened there exactly. The clip you didn't see me watching the other day was actually from the 1950s from the Durango-Silverton Railroad when they crashed two engines for a film, which I do not remember the name of, and I should have put it in
And that
here.
was the film part that you were watching.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry if you guys just heard that. I was trying to get my glasses back on my
and
face.
I'm sure being the Durango and Silverton, a bunch of fucking foamers lost their shit when they saw that video.
Foamers.
Because some of the groups I'm in now, apparently one or two of those engines, they painted the boilers green, and holy shit, the boomer foamers have lost their fucking mind over
You should
it.
probably explain what a foamer is to those that don't know.
You have, like, I'll use sports as an example to being more common. So you have your fan. So we'll say, okay, we'll use one that's close to us. We'll use fucking Notre Dame.
Okay.
So you have your fans of Notre Dame. You know, they watch a game. You know, they have a shirt or two or whatever. They wear, you know, their lucky hat on game day or whatever. And then you have the fanatics that can ramble off the sports statistics for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish of 1987, you know, football team to a degree. Owns everything Notre Dame related, bath mats, toilet paper, God knows. If it's got the fucking Irish leprechaun on it, they fucking own it. And so basically what a foamer is, think of it as a Notre Dame fanatic. They can rattle off all the information on any given locomotive you give them or railroad, like to the point that no, you don't really fucking care.
See, I always, like, I knew what the foamer was because you've explained it to me before, but in my head, like, the way I see it is, like, they're so enthralled and, like, consumed by this shit that they, like, foam at the mouth.
It's basically how it started, what I understand from, like, railroaders were saying, God damn, they foam at the mouth, basically.
Okay, then, I wasn't far off.
So, like, I'm probably going to catch some flack from this. Like, I used a Union Pacific Big Boy earlier.
Yeah.
I can give two shits less of that about that engine as a fucking rail fan. Yes.
David.
Yeah.
You're going to disappoint your daddy.
No. You probably know which one I probably lose my shit over if it ever fucking ran again, which we both know it's never going to happen.
Which one would that be? Something I should know, yeah?
Yep.
Is it the one at the Henry Ford?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
There's only two of those left in existence, and neither one of them are in operation. No. One of them is in operating condition, and it's never going to leave that building. Because one of the groups I'm in, he's actually a employee of the Greenfield, and it's been brought up and asked in there before, and he says, yeah, it is in operating condition still, but it's never going to leave that building.
Probably not, yeah.
And not only that, the weight of that thing, it's
huge.
Yeah, it's actually larger than the Big Boy that I had mentioned.
Huge.
Even though the Union Pacific Big Boy is the largest, Chesapeake and Ohio Alleghenies are the more powerful engines.
Okay, to give you just an example of how massive this train is that he's talking about that's at the Henry Ford in Dearborn, Michigan, I stood next to the wheel. Mm-hmm. Fucking iron-ass wheel.
Right.
I'm 5'3". That thing was taller than me.
Yeah.
Just one wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's insane. Insane.
Yeah. So that's it about train crashes and whatnot. And I'm probably going to got a couple more train episodes on my list. I'm probably going to throw in at some point this year. Maybe not. We'll see.
To be determined.
To be determined with our scheduling. We already have listed out for almost into what, April?
Yeah, the last one we have written for is April, and then one in May for a very specific reason.
Yep.
And then there's some gaps in between, but we're mostly, I think we're good to go for a while.
So instead of doing our regular outro
Yeah.
of our music and our social media bit, we did have planned for the end of our New Year's Eve episode is a clip that I stitched of some behind the scene bloopers of us just being stupid, mispronunciations and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, because there's a lot that I cut out. Like, since most of our episodes are an hour long, I generally cut out about a half an hour worth of material because it's mispronunciations, it's gaps because we forgot something in our script. So other than that, I think it might be time we close up the Emporium for the day. Sarah, what do you think?
I agree.
So until next time,
remember to creep it real. Oh yeah, also Happy New Year, all that fun shit. Thanks for listening. We hope you continue to listen for the next coming year. Okay, bye.
Bye.
We have been together. Did you fucking throw in the Doobie Brothers?
No.
Wasn't it Steely Dan? You did! God damn it!
Oh, see, the thing with that is, when I actually looked up the Billboard one hits for 1973, they had like China Grove and a couple long train running on there, and my thought was, no, I'm not gonna put that in there. And I just literally read Steely Dan and just fucking the Doobie Brothers fucking shot out of my goddamn mouth.
I was like, I'm pretty sure I saw that the other day, or 25 minutes ago, and it said Steely Dan, and then I saw your face and it all made sense. Like, you did that shit on purpose.
Okay, I'll start back.
Okay.
Do any more cloud rips before we do episode 2? I'm not I'm not loving it.
The fuck? Oh, too bad it wasn't Burger King, and that one was the Whopper.
Oh, look at you coming in and being punny about it now.
Okay. Let me get my emotional support cat. Okay.
A queer little boy who is constantly shooting his pistol. Hopefully they're meaning his actual firearm and not something else. Cutting that out because I had to get that shit out because I know what's coming. Because I know how bad this is. You don't. So I had to get that shit out.
Okay.
At 5:05 p.m., officers are given the authorization. Fuck you, Spit. Alright. Have weird moans and howls coming from dark corners.
Wonder where the weird moans came from.
I'm sure it's not anything like a, oh yeah.
Oh, fuck no.
No, that's a whole other haunted house, and you gotta be a certain age under that one. Would you hurry up? Now I gotta read that whole fucking part over again because somebody just had to throw up. Finally, thank you. And we are recording. Yay!
Welcome back to Macabre Emporium. We are episode 3.
Yes, this is episode 3.
Technically 4. I'm sure you guys by now have heard the Halloween bonus episode that we did.
Sorry, I went blank there.
Do you want to start that whole thing over?
Yep.
Okay. You want to get rid of that so it's not shit you gotta cut out? Did you boop her nose?
No, I do this.
Don't boop her nose because she just booped his butthole, so.
No, I do this, and she usually runs her head under my finger like this.
Sexual
Immortality? Fucking idiot.
Gertrude.
Is he done? You want to go take a shit next? Maybe puke in the kitchen?
No, Salem's the puker for audio. He's clawing in sticky beans.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to start that over.
Okay.
Her luck seemingly changed when Lester Likens gave her the opportunity to board.
Sex. Maybe I should just say sex 10 and be done with it. Fuck. Still on my line of
I know your face was like, what the fuck do I do?
Right.
Well, you're going to name it Halloween episode anyway, so
and then
whatever.
since somebody wants to be fucking mouthy right now,
It's our ginger bitch.
there's another clip. Although starlings do... nope, you didn't hear that.
What?
Yeah, exactly. You didn't hear that. Here we go again. Take 73. That's going to be a clip now. Could have been a much shorter walk if Tony had remembered where he had poked his car.
I mean, you don't know. He could be into some geeky shit like that.
Yeah, that reminds me of an old SNL skit that had like a fake pussy in the back of it. Anyhow, that's getting cut. So, with that said, and fucking sirens because it's fucking daytime.
Ooh, and we're in the hood.
Not really. One part that they kind of embellished at the end of it was a goddamn train running through Tony's fucking apartment.
Oh, if only that was true. You might as well pause it.
Fucking National
would
Guard
figure.
was gonna run a train through Tony's fucking bedroom wall.
And then the football team was just going to run a train.
I mean, so most people are like, oh my god, death, ew, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so you know what? Get over it. It's part of life. You know, what the fuck is that noise?
I don't know. What is it?
I don't know. It's the fucking fridge.
Is it really?
Yes, it is. God damn it.